Cool. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if you're you can either follow along or just watch. It's up to you guys. It's gonna be shorter, like 15 to 20 minutes, hopefully. And then I'm gonna be uploading everything to a YouTube channel for you guys to rewind and pause as necessary. So don't feel like you have to grok everything. I'm gonna start going faster than I did yesterday because of that. Because I'm not gonna waste everyone's I'm not gonna waste everyone's time. In big long lectures. So if you don't have a lot of time now, but you have time tomorrow, these 2-hour sessions are probably not going to work for everyone long term, and I want to make sure everyone who wants to can make it work long term. So it's going to be faster sessions. You can still ask questions, but I'm going to try and cap it at 30 minutes maximum each time, and then unlimited time in the Discord right after. If you have time now, I'll help everyone, other people can help, and etc. But because the videos will be on YouTube, you can just rewatch them and pause and go over parts you're not getting, and you'll see the code there and stuff, right? Make sure I'm recording.
Okay.
Yes. Cool. So I'm going to start off with my terminal. I'm going to open up my terminal, and up top here, I'm going to go to my code folder like before. CD code. I'm going to CD test, CD into my test folder. I'm going to write code space dot, which opens my current folder, Visual Studio Code. Whoops, I'm actually in a different folder. This one here, CD test studio code dot. Cool. So now I've got my code from yesterday up in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to create a new file on the left. I'm going to call it day2.js to separate the two. And you'll see up top I have my first day, and then now I've got another tab just like Google Chrome for my other files. So got my folder open, got multiple files. With day2.js, now obviously I wanted to run it. I wouldn't run node test.js. That would run my original one, right? I would run node day2.js because I'm telling node what I want to run, which JavaScript file I want to run. You can toggle between the two. If you're ever trying to write syntax, you can't remember what it is, you have your first file open here with all of your shit from yesterday. So to recap yesterday a little bit, we had some, we learned about declaring variables. So I can say like, my string variable is equal to hello. I can write a comment for myself. That's declaring a string variable with value of hello. We also know I can do my number variable equals 5. Declaring a number variable with value of 5. And then the other one we did was a Boolean. My Boolean variable is true. Declaring a Boolean variable with value of true. So today the lesson is going to be exploring the rest of the basic types and just basically doing what we did yesterday but with some additional types, and then adding in some homework that expands and relies on you to do your research around them. So we know we can also declare functions as well. We have a function print string, and it can take any string. We'll call it string, the argument here. And this thing can just console.log the string. This is different than yesterday, just to show a little bit of a difference. Before, what we did was we wrote return in here, right? Inside the function block. Anything inside the brackets here is inside the function block. So when you run your function, anything between the curly braces will run. So yesterday we did, like return hello plus string. Now we see we can do whatever we want in the function block. We can just have this print using console log right in the function. Now when we call print string hello out here, and I run node day2.js, it prints hello. This is different than yesterday. And it's probably a little bit confusing at first to see that. But this function doesn't return anything anymore. There's no output. So we can't save it to a variable like this, when we say the constant result is equal to this. We can't do this. It doesn't return anything. The function itself calls another function to print, or function chaining, basically, right? That's a little bit different than yesterday. There's two other ways. The way that we did it yesterday would be something like return string, and it just returns the string. And then we have to call console.log return string hello, because the function itself doesn't log. Now you can see I get two hellos. I get the first hello there, I get another one down there. And I can say, I'll write some comments here if you guys are typing along here. This function named print string, this declares a function named print string that calls console.log to log whatever string I pass in directly to the console. Note that I don't need to call console.log or save the result of print string to a variable. I can just call print string, pass in whatever string I want, and it will print it. This declares a function named return string, which returns the string. This is what we did yesterday. If I don't call console.log on the output of this function, nothing gets logged. So we can kind of see there's two ways to do it here within the function. So we're going to be using functions calling other functions basically today, which is what all this kind of leads up to, is we want to be able to say, can a function call another function? I'll give everyone 1 minute to catch up and kind of cut, if you're typing along, to catch up there. Writing the comments. If you are following along with the code, I suggest writing the comments either as I do them, or maybe you have terminology that makes more sense to you as you do them that would be more explaining. Maybe you just want to add more stuff to it, like this is what we did yesterday or something somewhere, right? To help make that sense to you. But the comments will help. The next time you come back to your code, the comments will explain what you were doing. The function often, and it's very common, especially as you get with more complicated stuff, the function will not be self-explanatory. You often want to name functions as clear as possible. Like I could have called this do whatever. But like, what does it do, right? So I called it print string, because that's what it does. It prints it to the output. I call this one return string, because it just takes whatever string I pass in and returns the string to me. And that kind of makes more sense to my brain when I read it. I read print string here. The comments still, help, but the function naming is really important. I noticed some people, when they did their homework, they named stuff pretty erratically. Some people named it more descriptive. Whatever works for you is what's going to be the best. There's no right or wrong answer. But I find a longer function name makes more sense to me. Kind of reading it like English, So, what other types are there that we can use? We know string, number, Boolean. There are array types. An array is a group of values. So a traditional variable up here holds one value, right? Hello. 5. True. We're declaring constant variables with a name here, the value. An array declared the same way can hold multiple values. So we can say const my array of numbers is. So I've got here a different bracket. This is just the regular square bracket. So we've got the curly brackets for functions. We've got the rounded brackets for function parameters, function arguments. And then we've got this. And that's the last brackets you'll ever learn. So you're already done learning brackets once you get used to those three. So it's not too bad. So this is a group of numbers, and we to see what that looks like, we can log it out, right? Knowing console.log. Let's pass in my array of numbers as the argument. You can run that with node day2.js, right? You can see I got the brackets and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in a real world, just take a slight step back for a tiny bit, is when a lot of this is abstract concept. When would you use this kind of stuff? Well, an array can store anything. So if you imagine when you go view a website and you see all of your NFTs, well, they don't have a thing saying, oh, here's one variable, it's one NFT. Here's another variable, it's another NFT. Here's another variable, it's another NFT. It's an array of NFTs, right? And I know some of you guys, we haven't gotten to loops or control structures yet, but we will by the end of today. And you can say that you can iterate through those. You can loop over them. So I can say, go through this array and display all my NFTs that are in the array. I can do anything with an array. It's just a list of anything. I can say const my array of strings is equal to, with the brackets, hello, Jeff, Horsey, as many as I want. And I can console.log my array of strings. So this is really powerful stuff because it really says it's going to be a way that we organize code, and it's going to be a way that we can declare lists. Otherwise, it would just be constantly declaring single things. Arrays have a bunch of built-in functions on them as well. So I'm going to go a little bit quick here and then take a step back and explain what I'm going to do. So arrays have built-in functions that can help. We can also loop through them. So we're going to do our first control structure here. So I'm going to declare a new function. Let's call this function print array length. It'll take an array. Here we declare a new function named print array length that takes an array as its single argument. We want this function to print the length of the array. So given that we have an array, we want to print the length. So we can say right off the bat, we know if we're going to print something. We're not returning anything in this one, right? We're going to print. So right off the bat, I hope your intuition goes right away to we need to call console.log to print. Don't need to pass anything in there yet, but we know we're printing, so we can print the array length. Arrays have a built-in member, or built-in I guess we'll call them a member. It's a property, something like this. Call it a property for now. Built-in property called length. So if we just take that array that we passed in and write dot length in the console log, and then we can call print array length because we declared it. So we can write, now we need to call the function print array length and pass in an array. Let's say print array length. And let's pass in, we have two arrays up here, my array of numbers, my array of strings. Doesn't matter which one you pass in if you've been typing along or if you did a different one. Hey, sneezy. So I've got here, I logged out 5 at the bottom because I passed in my array of numbers. So we know that there's 5 things in the array, which is, true. If I say my array of strings, oops, I'm going to expect to get 3 because I have 3 things up here. what if I want to make another function now? Actually, I'll wait 1 minute for you guys to catch up. So, and I'll kind of reiterate what I've just done. New function, we declared it, called print array length. This one wants to take an array. I like to call you can call these function arguments whatever you want, right? I can call this D or anything. But it's more clear to me that I'm dealing with an array if I call it array. And as we go further down the rabbit hole, you might only want this to be an array of strings or an array of numbers. And you might call this array of strings. So that when you read it, you can be like, I have to pass in an array of strings to this. But we don't care right now. So we just call it array. And I print the length. So now let's declare another function that prints every element of the array. Each thing in an array is called an element. I'll write that down. Each item in an array is called an element. So 1 is an element, 2 is an element, 3 is an element, 4 is an element, and 5 is an element. So now let's declare another function that prints every element of the array. So we're basically going to be redoing this, and I hope this is beginning to make a little bit of sense to person. So here we declare the new function named, let's call it print elements in array. That takes an array as its single argument and prints out each element inside of the array. So I write function print array length an array. Very similar to the previous one, but you know we can just do console.log array, right? And call print array. Oh, sorry, this is supposed to be called print elements in array. My bad. Print elements in array. So we could just do this, console.log array, and print elements in array, and pass in, I don't know, my array of strings. Sure. And it does the same thing. That's not what we want to do. We actually want to loop through it, and we want to print out each element in the array. We don't want to log out the whole array. We want to print out the elements in the array. You can tell which one you're doing because it actually has the brackets on the other side here. You can see that you're printing out an array here, right? Not the elements in the array, printing out the array. When we printed out hello or 3, which was the length, you don't see these brackets in the logs. Like, we're printing out the values there. Here we're printing out the array. So that's wrong. So we need to tweak our print elements in array function. And we're going to do that with a loop. So this is going to be the most confusing thing for you guys first. So I'm going to write it out as I go, kind of talking about what I'm doing, and then the rest of the homework is going to be related around this. So don't worry if you don't get this one right away. So we're in a for loop. So we can write for. And our brackets. And we say let I equals 0. I is less than the array dot length I plus plus. This is what a for loop looks like in JavaScript. So we say where we want to start. We're at for, and then for is a function. It's a built-in function. So we have to write the rounded parentheses. We say let I equal 0. The first thing in the array, in the loop is where do we want to start looping from, right? We want to loop from starting from 0. When do we want the loop to end after that semicolon? We want it to end when array.length is done. So I is less than array.length. And the last part of it is what happens at the end of every loop. So we've got where do we start, when do we finish, and what happens at the end of every loop. And the code inside the blocks here will run every loop. So I can say I'm going to declare a variable here. So I'm actually going to write some comments here first. I'm going to say this is how we declare a for loop. Let I equals 0 says we want to start the loop at 0. I is less than array.length. Also, if people can't keep up, I'll be pasting this in the announcements channels, all with the full comments and stuff. So if I is less than array.length is when we want to finish the loop, i.e. stop looping when this condition is met, when I is less than array.length. I plus plus is what we want to do every loop. I plus plus means add 1 to I. So the first loop, I will be 0. The next loop, I will be 1. Then 2. Then 3. And then if your array is 3 things long, it'll stop. So we're looping through the length of the array is what this says. We're going to loop through the length of the array. How do we get the element in the array during a loop? We say const element is equal to the array I. So I'll explain this one here. Actually, I'll write console.log element, and I'll run this first so you guys can see it work. There, so you can see at the bottom I got hello, Jeff, and Horsey. Those are the 3 things in my array of strings. So I successfully iterated through, looped, and logged out everything in the array, which is awesome. So how did this work? You remember that arrays are declared with this bracket here, like the same thing up here. We have the square bracket. We can access property elements in an array by the number that they are. So in everything is 0 index. I know some people know this already. It's kind of a weird concept. The first element in an array is the 0th, not the first. So that's why we start I at 0 here. And it's always a tricky concept. It takes a long time to remember this and figure it out. So don't feel overwhelmed with it. It's very annoying, but eventually it starts making a lot of sense. It's the 0th element, not the first one. So there are 3 elements in this array. Hello, Jeff, and Horsey. The 0 element, the first element, and the second element. 3 elements, 0, 1, and 2. And I can access them, because this is my array here, with I. I starts off at 0, and every loop we add 1 to it. So the first time this runs, the first time this loop runs, I is a variable equal to 0. So when we say array I, we are saying array 0 and saving that element into a variable called element. Then we are logging it to the console, and the loop repeats until we have reached the condition of I is less than array.length, right? So we're running through this. Let I equal 0, I is less than array.length, add 1 to I every single time we loop. So I'm getting the 0th element, I'm logging it out. Okay, there's no more code in the bracket here, so the loop is done. So now we add 1 to I, and I is now 1. So now when we say const element is equal to array I, it's array 1, the second element in the array. The second element, but accessed with 1, because there's 0 index. We log that out. And then it runs another time. Now I is 2, because we added 1 to I. Say const element is equal to array 2. We log that element. The array.length is 3, at least for me, because I have 3 elements in this array I'm passing in. And now it's done. So when I call it down there, print elements in array, my array of strings, it logs them out. Now it's probably a lot to understand, but I can also pass in my array of numbers, right? We're dealing with any array here. So now you can see it logs out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row here. because now it's doing the same thing. It's iterating through that array. Now array.length is 5, so it's going to run this 5 times, but it's still going to do the same thing. It's going to get, using this array index notation, saying, get me the value of this array here. Give me the element at that position, and then log it out. I can also say, print elements in array, and inline an array like this. That's an array, right? Because we have the brackets here, and I have a value of 1. It prints out 1 there. Or I can 1, 5, and 10. So this is obviously a ton more than yesterday. So we're pretty much going to leave it here, but with homework. And obviously you guys can go through this video to understand this more and type it out, because the syntax is probably very confusing and stuff. I'll take questions for a bit now, because it's probably useful to have them in the video for other people, because you obviously don't have to listen to it every time. You can skip past the questions if needed. But does anyone have any specific questions, things you want me to extra clarify, things to go over, things I went too fast on that you'd like, I didn't talk about let at all, if anyone's confused about let. Is there anything specific?
Everything was too fast. I could not keep up. I'm going to watch it a bunch of times. I'm sure I'll get there once I've watched it a few times.
Yeah.
But that was way faster. Like, I was trying to type, your shit, and it was hard to type and listen to what you were on to next already.
Yeah, it might honestly be better to not type and follow along for new concepts, because the video will be around for you to type in after. And this is this stuff is going to be probably the most complicated stuff we're going to be learning for the first week, maybe, because after this, it's combining this kind of programming logic, right? So once you understand this stuff, we'll just be doing it in different ways. But learning it the first time is going to be the most confusing thing you'll probably do in programming, is learning these basic building blocks. It's like Lego. Without the basic beginning, you can't see the finished product, and until you kind of get started putting them together. But I can run through the whole thing again in like a 2-minute run through if you'd like.
I think the other issue is that he doesn't have a second monitor.
Oh yeah, yes.
Oh, you are using it? Okay.
Yeah.
Diddly, just slow down the YouTube video like by half. That's what I'm gonna do.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try that.
Yeah, slowing it down and just re-watching specific parts will help. I'll run.
And when you rename,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
when you rename those functions, you're using the generic like function name. Like I see where you try to populate commands. You stick with the name of them, right? Like the generic names.
What do you mean?
Like say for example, like array and function. Like you're saying you can rename them to your customized like preference, right?
You can't rename function keyword here.
Oh, okay.
You can rename the name.
Like, what were you renaming then?
You can rename the name of the function. So instead of like print
okay.
array length here, right? I have my array here, my 2 arrays, and I call this print array length. But maybe I actually want to call this log array length to console. Maybe I like that as a better name.
Oh, okay.
And then now it's called that. That's what I'm choosing, is the name
Gotcha,
of the
gotcha.
function. So the things in dark blue are like keyword constants. Like I can't change those. Those are built into the language. Yellow
Oh,
is a
nice. That's a good way to put it. Constants and yep. Okay.
yeah, and then yellow things are functions. So that means I usually control the name of them, but in some cases I don't, like console.log. So you can't get into the habit of thinking you write everything. You create the term of everything with yellow.
Can you explain the logic of the for let?
Yep, sure. Cool. So what we're doing here is looping through an array. When you write a for, it takes 3 arguments. For takes 3 arguments, separated by semicolons. The first is where the loop should start. Like, you can't run a loop indefinitely, right? You have to define a loop's beginning and end so that the loop knows when to stop. Otherwise, you have, like a memory leak or infinite loop. This is what happens in programming sometimes. When something freezes, when a computer program freezes or crashes, it's because an infinite loop happened, right? It can never get out of it. Like, I could easily write this loop to be infinite and my whole computer would crash right now. So you need to define where to start and where to end. We've declared variables with const up here, right? Constants. There are 2 ways to declare variables. The other one is with let. And you can think of it in English, right? Const are constants when you declare a variable. They cannot be changed. I am not allowed to do this. I simply cannot do this. Const my string variables equal to hello. Now I'm saying my string variable, same name, right, is equal to hi. I can't do that. It won't compile. I said it's a constant. I expect this to never be changed. But if I have a variable called let changeable, let's call let changeable, and I say it's equal to, Jeff. Below that, I can change the value of it to, Horsey. So we've got const and let. And I recommend Googling this on your own. Google like JavaScript declare variable const let and reading about it. And seeing the differences. Lets are changeable. So you say, in English, you say, let this equal that, right? Let this be that. Okay, now let this be this. Now let this be this. You can change it all the time. We're going to let this be Jeff. Oh, now we're going to let this be Horsey. Const, you cannot do that. You cannot redeclare it. So that's what let means. Let is a changeable variable.
You make a note of that, of what the Google is things right there too?
Sure.
So I want to go back through, I don't want to type anything as these classes are going myself, so I go watch the whole thing, but I want to go through and write it down at the end, like line by line, until I understand that line.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. So let is a changeable variable. And I'll change the term here to say let name, just so we think that I'm not creating that thing. So let name equal Jeff. Let is a changeable variable. Const is a not changeable or constant variable. If I say let name equals Jeff, I can change the value of name. Change the value of the variable name. So we can go through here and we can say, actually the better way to do this one second, will be to create a new file just called, I'm going to call this one variables.js. Okay, so same thing as I had before, but I created a new file, variables.js. Let is a changeable variable. Const is a not changeable or constant variable. If I say let name is equal to Jeff, I can change the value of the variable name. If I say let name is equal to Jeff, and I'll write console.log name, right? So if I run node variables.js, I can say, oh cool, it prints out Jeff. Now let's say name is equal to Horsey. Let's do console.log name. Now it's Horsey. The same variable changed. Now I change the name variable value to be Horsey. When I pass it to console.log to print it.
Can you give an example of when that would be used, or pretty much just used?
Sure. So constant variables, you pretty much declare everything to be a constant at the beginning because it makes it more readable to know something can't change. And then when you find out you do need to change something, you go back and you make it a let, is the standard way. So, for instance, I have a variable, like let's say, like this is pseudocode for a crypto app, right? I have let address. So you log into like, you know, any NFT marketplace or something, and you haven't signed in with MetaMask or the DayJob wallet or anything yet, right? So we don't know what address you're using. So we have to say like let address at the beginning. But once you sign in later, we say address is equal to 0x12345, right? Because we have your address now. After you've signed in, after you've clicked and approved it through the wallet. So we're going to change that later. But so say pseudocode for a crypto app. We declare a variable named address and leave it empty. Because when the page loads, we don't have the user's address yet from the crypto wallet. After the user signs in, we have it, and we set it to the value of the address. We would use a const value in the crypto app in a different way. So say you have the home page, and the home page says my crypto app, and that's the title on the page, right? You're on a website, you see a big title in the middle of the page, and it says my crypto app. So let's say const title, so my crypto app, so we can display it on the page. We're never going to change the title. Like our company name isn't changing. It's like mid-app, mid-running of the app, right? Like I'm not going to suddenly like expect some value in code to change, and all of a sudden I want my title of the company to be like, you know, NFT Degen Inc. Like my company has a name. This is constant. I don't want the title of my company to change. So it is a constant. I do not ever expect to change this value. That kind of makes sense. Mayo as an example. Like you declare a variable when you expect it to change with let.
Like you might not want the company's name to change, but you might want like the seasonal background or something, or you know, kind of in that sense, no?
Yeah, or even the user's address. What happens when I go to MetaMask or the DayJob wallet and I change my account?
Yep, gotcha.
The address changes. I don't want to not be able to change the user's address, because I display that on the page to them. I say top right of the nav bar or whatever on a website. I say, oh, your address is 0x12345. You've changed it. I need to change that in the page. That's going to be a let for sure. That's going to be a let. We're gonna need that to change on some condition on the page. Const is something will never change.
Mm-hmm. I like the breakdowns too, like real world uses. You know, definitely helps.
Yeah, sweet. Glad to hear it. Yeah, please ask if you need real world
examples. How do you do a line through?
Oh, that's just my stupid. I have a visual code extension that does that I need to remove. You actually don't want the line through.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Ignore the line through here. I'll remove it for later. It's because name. Name is a protected keyword in some languages. Like C, so it's trying to basically say like, you know, here it says name is deprecated, don't use name.
Okay, cool. I'm glad I asked, because I'd have been trying to fucking put a strike through that shit.
Yeah, no, that's just a weird visual code syntax thing. So all that is to say here is if we go back to the array, when I say for let is, someone's got a tractor.
Holy shit.
Yeah, or say.
That's not me. I heard it too.
I think it was wonky.
Oh, is it louder?
No, it's better now. All right,
It sounded like something was running, but yeah, all good.
So all that is to say is when you're writing this for loop here, we need to declare let. Because this variable I is our iteration through the loop. And I recommend Googling and reading about for loops as well. Just like, you know, so it's always helped. I recommend constantly just to be like, if you're confused, like there's there's infinite resources out there, right? I'm trying to point you guys in the right direction, but I'm not trying to teach you everything about stuff. I'm trying to teach you how to learn. So if you're confused by the for loop, write a bunch of for loops. Google it and write an exercise on it. You can do homework that's not specific to this homework. If you're confused on one section, find a section that works for you. Or find a tutorial online that works for you on specific something. But if we wrote const here, instead of let, this variable isn't allowed to change. So when my loop runs and I try and make I plus equals 1, it can't work. It's unchangeable. I is always going to be 0. And we can see that when I run. Oops, I'm running the wrong file. It's node day2.js. See? Assignment to constant variable. I am not allowed to do that. And you can see that example anywhere if you try and reassign a constant just by saying what we ran through on the variables page if you rewind the video. So this is probably enough now. It's been 40 minutes, I think, to be able to make it easy to find what you guys want. And the syntax will be in the video, and you should type along with it. Help each other, Google for loops and stuff. I'm going to put a homework assignment in the announcements channel, but you should run through this, type out everything I've typed out, figure out the difference, the main takeaways, whoops, I'll put this in the announcements channel as well as main takeaways from day 2 should be, there are types of variables, strings, booleans, numbers, and arrays are types we know. There are permissions for variables, constants, using const keyword, and changeable, using let keyword. There are control flows, like for loops, that let us run iterations. Those are the 3 main takeaways. And combining those things with what you learned yesterday, and we'll still be practicing, will let you write additional functions. So the goal right away basically should be either following along or typing this up and getting it to run. Just this. And then understanding this via the homework. I'm going to have homework that's literally just more of this shit. You'll have to be writing it yourself. And it'll be helping, but it'll reinforce this. I don't expect anyone to understand this yet. That's not really the point. You have to write it and do it and bash your head against it to understand it. But the homework will involve arrays and loops and the variables from yesterday. And you have 2 full days to do it. So it's not like it has to be done by tomorrow, right? It's going to be for Saturday night. And then obviously ask questions in the Discord. Does anyone have anything they want to bring up now at the end before uploading the video and writing out homework and bashing your head a little bit against it? By the way, I'll recommend strongly after each video to not stop right away. To do 30 minutes to an hour of stuff if you have time. Big recommend on that because it will reinforce it. Even if you just are confused trying to do it for 30 minutes, that is a necessary part of the step. So like after this, if you want, upload video and blah 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 and get at it if you have time is my biggest recommendation. And you always learn more from a back and forth than you do from a lecture. People are helping each other in the Discord, and I can already tell people are learning more that way. It's kind of why I'm trying to go fast, because you'll be able to watch this at any speed you want later. Certain people will take longer for certain things, other people won't, and people can help and they'll reinforce that way. But if I talked about this array and this loop for 3 hours, nobody would get it still until you go try and do it and bash your head against it. Do you know what I mean? Like you're never gonna understand it from me just